All right. Hello. Happy Thursday. Hey. Alyssa Orange, Drew Ammon here. Going to kind of switch roles a little bit. I get to ask Drew all the questions. Are you scared?
I'm digging it. I like it. It's kind of weird from this vantage point, though. I'm kind of like, our office looks different right
I'm going to throw some questions at you. Obviously, the hottest topic everyone wants to talk about is this coaching update. And I felt like since it's Thursday, the day before game day eve, that we can kind of talk about where things are right now. Otis Kurt, also give him some love because he's been writing some really good profile pieces on hogville.net as well.
He's working hard. Yeah, absolutely. And, he mentioned Justin Fuente. We'll get to that. But Mike Norvell, you want to start with Mike? Because obviously the Football Scoop outlet is reporting that Arkansas has met with Mike Norvell. So let's just kind of address that report, because I think when you look at this as a coach who is up and coming, clearly he's 38 years of age, 35-15 overall at Memphis. He's making $1.86 million per season. His contract goes through 2021, but his buyout not much. It's around $500,000. So the kind of jack that Arkansas can throw at Mike Norvell. It's very tempting. Would he leave Memphis knowing where that program is right now? Obviously, different level. You're at the American Athletic Conference level. This is the SEC at Arkansas we're talking about, although it doesn't feel like Arkansas is an SEC program right now where they're playing football. But this is an Arkansas program that would really enjoy, I think, getting a guy of his caliber in terms of what they're doing scoring-wise. They are top 10 in America right now in scoring offense, Memphis. This is a football program in Memphis that's averaging 41.5 points per game. But I think just big picture, looking at this, it's still that element of, he's got the ties, having played at UCA, but how will it translate? And I know you talked about that a week or so ago about, it's always, this guy's proven because he's won a lot of games. He won 35 games at Memphis. That's impressive. But again, going from the AAC to the SEC, making that jump.
Yeah, that's what I want to know is, again, and my biggest issue with a Mike Norvell, someone not from a Power 5 school, Drew, can you take that risk? Do you even call it a risk? And then Football Scoop talking today about how Arkansas, according to their sources, have reached out to Mike Norvell, but Mike Norvell says that, he's more interested in that Florida State job. If he doesn't get the Florida State job, then he goes and looks at Arkansas again. Do you feel like Hunter Yurachek is looking for a candidate who wants to be the second option? You see, like Eric Musselman was all in Arkansas. Is Hunter Yurachek going to put up with a coach who Arkansas is their second option or third option at this point right now?
Well, to me, we always get in this thing when we go through processes like this where you're looking for a new head coach, where you consider, is this guy a home run hire? And to me, Mike Norvell is not a home run hire. But to use that baseball analogy, that term that is, a lot of people were like, Eric Musselman was not a home run hire when Arkansas was looking for a new head men's basketball coach to replace Mike Anderson. In my opinion, that was a great hire. It will turn out to be a great hire for Arkansas basketball. Not to digress, but this is where we get into the language of it, and I know I talk a lot about that, but just throw that out the window right now, the whole home run hire thing. But I will say this, I don't feel great about Mike Norvell, to be honest with you. I think he's a guy who could come in and help them score more points, clearly. I think he would obviously fare better than Chad Morris, but, that's not saying a whole lot. I just think you've got to look a little higher than Mike Norvell. And again, to me, it's just that feel right now. And you mentioned second option.
Yeah. Is that what you're going to put up with?
Yeah, if Florida State's going to court this guy as well, I don't know. Makes me feel a little uneasy.
As a Florida State alum, I don't really know how I feel about him at my alma mater. So there's just my little tidbit. But again, we digress. You talk about someone.
That's my opinion.
We talk about someone higher up. Otis wrote about Justin Fuente right now. Head coach at Virginia Tech, has been there, went from Memphis to Virginia Tech, right? Left Memphis to Virginia Tech, is that right? And then 7-3 this year with the Hokies. Beat, obviously, Arkansas in the Belk Bowl a few years ago. Your thoughts on Fuentes?
Well, Fuente in 2016 was able to get his team to mount that second half comeback against Arkansas there in Charlotte. And, at the time, I felt really good about Justin Fuente. But, kind of to Otis's point, and you look at that article, they started 2-2 this season. He has some roots that maybe you would think, okay, with him being a former Tulsa Union quarterback, this guy could go out and recruit in this area and take care of the regions and kind of piggyback, kind of feed off of what Chad Morris did in recruiting. And Barry Lunny Jr., the interim head coach right now for Arkansas, even mentioned that. He said, look, we could take some of the things that Chad Morris did in recruiting and we can really build. It's just it didn't work out clearly the way he was game managing and coaching. That's why Chad Morris is gone and only won 4 games as Arkansas head coach. But right now, Justin Fuente, again, kind of lukewarm about that one. And you know, I think you're going to get time and again on these comments, and we've seen it over the course of the last couple of days and really within the last, I'd say, week, the mentioning of Lane Kiffin, the mentioning of Mike Leach, and we talked a lot about Mike Leach. And, you know, if you were to prioritize right now, at least if you're me, I think I'd probably put Mike Leach a little higher than these other guys we've talked about. Lane Kiffin, I might even put a little higher than Mike Norvell. I don't know. I mean, he's a very transient guy. That guy's moved around so much, you kind of wonder long-term with Lane, and then that's my uneasiness with Lane. But that's kind of where I stand right now with the whole thing.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. In that Football Scoop article that we were reading today, they said that there are whispers that Arkansas has reached out to another head coach that could be a Mike Leach or a Lane Kiffin. Again, we don't know. Obviously, you got to respect Hunter being really confidential in this search. Very small, minimal search that a lot of people aren't involved in for a reason so that things don't get leaked out. Could this be another situation like it was with Bielema a few years ago where it was someone completely no one had been talking about? Maybe look at NC State and a Dave Dorn over there and what he's been able to do, turn that Wolfpack program around. Is there another coach that we're maybe not talking about, like maybe a Dave Dorn? Dino Babers is kind of at Syracuse, kind of went to the wayside a little bit, that you can almost go and get right now?
I think there very well could be, and I think just to talk in a broad sense, there could be somebody even in the NFL ranks we're not even talking about. I don't know. Hunter Yurchek, I think he's got a pretty large scale of people. I think when you look at his Rolodex, it's very large, and you know, he's made multiple stops as an AD, and I respect the way he's going to go about this. And why do I feel that way? Because even though I know this is the most important hire that will had to have transpired during the Hunter Yurachek era, I do believe that he's going to go about it the right way. And why? Because I just feel like he did a great job with the basketball hire. And I know basketball, football, you're talking about different circumstances there, but
the way he ran it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's it. It's the fact that he was pretty tight to the vest with the Musselman thing. And so he's going to do everything in his power to do the same with football. And it's going to take a little longer. I feel better about that, honestly, because yeah, there is the cliche. You want to make sure you get it right, and I know people are like, "Oh, stop throwing out cliches." But that's the thing. We got a little bit more time to work with here. If you're Arkansas, you got conference championship week as well. So you know, Chad Morris was hired December 6th of 2017. This time around, you could see a new hire coming in December 13th, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, or we could be really surprised and get a phone call that Saturday after their game on Friday, and he's making an announcement. It'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, the biggest thing that came out yesterday, Houston Nutt said on a radio show, Arkansas contacted him. We were talking about it being running on Arkansas or on ESPN's bottom line there as a story. I personally have a hard time believing that in official capacity in terms of being a head coach, he got talked to, because then you wouldn't turn around and then go talk about it on a radio show. But I know that they're reaching out to other head coaches or previous head coaches at Arkansas to get some input. What are your thoughts on this? Because again, we got a lot of no nut, and then we got a lot of people excited like, oh, he got contacted. So where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, first of all, let me just eliminate this, and that is the thought of him coming back as head coach is just something that I've completely put to the wayside. I've seen that over and over again on social media posts. Bring back Houston Nutt, you know, and people stop at the Bobby Petrino stuff. Just get rid of those two scenarios. I just do not see any reason to continue with that talk. Now, with Houston Nutt, I could see where you would subscribe his advice somewhat, because he does know Arkansas so well and had so much success here and could speak to what you do to build that wall around the state of Arkansas to recruit as well as you need to, and to sort of, again, keep the steam going, keep things going in the right direction the way Chad Morris had recruiting going. Obviously, top 25 recruiting class here in 2019. But that's as far as I would go probably with Houston Nutt. And how much will he lend that advice to a Hunter Yurachek? I don't know. That doesn't mean that I'm just like anti-Houston Nutt. I'm just saying for this particular hire, I mean, you got to first of all, think a little bit more outside the box, and I think you also have to think a little bit more on a large scale. I mean, you're looking at a guy in Hunter Yurachek who, as I mentioned, I think based on his contacts, I think he could go and speak to enough people, even in the NFL ranks, but also just across so many conferences at the collegiate level.
Yeah. Want to get this take, maybe just from a personal level. We've talked about a lot of guys, and this is kind of where I am personally as I look at Arkansas's program and where they need to fill that void with a head coach. And these names we've been throwing out, and some fit better than others. But for me right now, I haven't come across a name that gives you that aha moment where you say, yes, this is a fit. That is it. Go after him. He would be perfect. That's where I am. Where are you at with some of these candidates and maybe how they would fit at Arkansas? Because my pieces aren't fitting together right now.
Well, first of all, I'm going to give you props because I think that's the best point that's been made on this Facebook Live so far. And that is because I've felt the same way, honestly. And, you know, I know sometimes it makes more fun for me to come up here and say, hey, I respectfully disagree with you, but I completely agree with what you just said. I have not had that moment where I've said, yeah, that's the guy. And I think that's where you have to just make sure you are diligent enough to say, all right, let's be patient, you know, just hang tight because I think Yurachek will get this right. I feel confident because that's just how confident I feel in him as an AD. And so let's just pump the brakes a little bit and realize that Chad Morris was fired the Sunday after the Western Kentucky game. So it's been a little while now, but not that long. And I'm just not one of these people who just wants to throw out a bunch of names. I don't believe in that. Yeah, there's probably a couple guys out there right now that we're definitively missing that perhaps should be on the short list. And that's where this whole thing about throwing out names kind of drives you nuts because it's like, okay, well, I'm going to throw out 10 to 15 names. Well, maybe Yurachek has 8 or 9 names right now. And maybe in the next 2 days he'll narrow that to 5. And then he can really bring in who will be finalists and really interview. I mean, like literally go through more of an extensive process. Yeah.
No, I'm interested to see. It's just always, it's what everyone wants to talk about. People are blowing up our phone and to be understood, we get that. But we've still got a lot more football to play, 2 more weeks. But, you know, this is kind of where we are right now. And this is what's consumed our life. I mean, I get asked about it all the time walking around.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think stylistically, I think that's another thing that needs to be addressed, and that is, what does Arkansas do from here? I mean, Tara and I were kind of talking about this, Tara Talmadge, and that is, she's over there editing right now. When I mentioned outside the box, I mean, what does Arkansas need to do to shake things up? I mean, do you radically shake things up? Because, you know, you've heard some people on the SEC Network talk about just where they are with an offense right now. And whether that means bringing in an offensive coordinator that's just going to be that much better in terms of simplifying things, because honestly, it's pretty easy to sit up here and criticize what has happened based on 2 wins again this season. And that is, in my opinion, I think, again, from a general standpoint, I see a lot of scenarios where they've been overthinking things. And I know you still have a young football team, but I just don't know where they're going with a lot of these X's and O's. And that's prohibited them from completing drives. You get in the red zone, you just can't finish.
No, it's hard and it's frustrating, and whoever it is, come whenever it will be announced, has got a lot of an uphill battle in terms of just kind of just organizing things and letting the dust settle a little bit on what's been going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a major flop. I mean, obviously, you brought in Chad Morris, and I think we were all sitting here when it happened, when it was really starting to gain traction. We were like, really? I mean, they were talking about this and talking about it, and then you looked at his high school background, and everybody was like, wow, I mean, maybe this will work. Maybe there's something, you know, radically that we're not thinking about. And then, it, you know, clearly was a deal where he was in over his head. And then defensively, I mean, look, I know it's a different age, so many spread offenses, but here we are with John Chavis, and
a lot of question marks.
And as we've talked about, you have to look at that patience factor that I mentioned and really assemble a staff that is not just extremely sharp in terms of coordinators, but you have to make sure that you get strong enough position coaches in here with enough experience. and have them fit, because that's where you need to go. Because right now that gap is so large between the Alabamas, the LSUs, Texas A&M, well, not so much Texas A&M, but Auburn in the SEC West, and it's the best division in all football. Well, talking,
with a former assistant coach at Arkansas for basketball, and one of his biggest points, as you make right now, at that gap is he goes, there were years when we would kill the Mississippi schools. That wasn't even a question. We knew we were going to beat the Mississippi schools, and now we're not even beating the Mississippi schools. And so for someone who's been an Arkansas fan all their lives, that's how they see it is, wait, we were beating these Mississippi schools, and now we can barely beat them, and they're blowing us out of their stadiums and our stadiums. So the perspective there in that gap of where Arkansas needs to be just in the West to compare to compete is pretty interesting. It's funny, Steve Spurrier always talks about the talking season, and usually that means the off season, but right now that's where we're in right now when it comes to a coaching search. And obviously, as people say, we're not going to know until Hunter Yurachek calls a press conference. And all we can do is kind of talk about the pros and cons that possible candidates bring to the table and see where the chips fall.
I don't know who out there legitimately you can say you're going to get based on kind of where the job is from an attractive standpoint or lack thereof. Arkansas, just in the scope nationally right now, has just been diminished to a point where, you just have to make sure that you align things so properly because of the buyouts that they've had to pay and how much they in particular had to pay Brett Bielema, at least, going back to the stage and the scope of moving forward. Now, I know Yurachek mentioned they clearly have the means. I mean, they can, I think, go after a guy and offer a good bundle of cash. But I think you still have to look at, okay, here we are again. Second time in 3 years we're dealing with this. And to your point, what I mean by the job, outside looking into Arkansas, this is still a great job.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm saying that it's been diminished to a point where, it's not attractive anymore. I'm just saying that it's so far at the bottom right now that, to your point, just I'm going to go back to that word patience. Realize that, first of all, you got to knock off those Mississippi schools. I mean, it's going to take some steps to really climb the ladder in the SEC West, and we're just seeing it. Alabama is that much better. LSU is that much better.
Well, you have to also remember that we weren't asking the administration, Hunter Yurachek wasn't asking Chad Morris to go and win the West immediately, but you need to be competitive in the SEC. Play SEC opponents competitively, and the only one that they were able to do so was Texas A&M year in and year out. And you got to win the team. You got to beat the teams that you pay to come in.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's the thing.
That's the biggest issue, and that was the biggest red flag for Chad Morris. But you're also, if you're a guy looking at the Arkansas job and you saw that they gave Chad 22 games, again, you got to remember, you got to beat. Chad would still be here if he beat, San Jose State and Western Kentucky and Colorado State. That's the biggest difference. But you got to be able to turn things around and do your job quickly, because they just fired someone after 22 games, and that's a little scary. You're still getting paid a lot of money, though.
Well, the adage goes, in the SEC in particular, you're hired to be fired a lot of times because it's that demanding, especially in the SEC West. I mean, you look at body of work. You always have to look at body of work. And the body of work for Chad Morris, as you mentioned, you took it back even further, and it was a good point, and that is you got to beat San Jose State. You got to beat Colorado State in both years you coached the program, and they only beat them once over Chad Morris's time. And then Western Kentucky comes in here, and Ty Story just, sticks that dagger in there. And you, honestly, at this point, have to start there because nothing is a guarantee at this point. And as you mentioned, you're paying these mid-major schools to come in here.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Don, my man over here, talking about Florida State's going after a former Vanderbilt head coach. Man, I hope you're right. I would love James Franklin in Tallahassee.
Ooh,
anyways.
James Franklin.
Woo, Don.
Ooh.
Don, just stirring up my emotions.
Okay, Don.
It'll be it's not going to happen. He's from Pennsylvania. Well, nobody on here cares any about that at all, so I'll stop talking.
No, that's all right.
Nobody wants to hear me talk about
it takes us back to the outset, and that is Mike Norvell and the fact that, you're looking at the interest perhaps in FSU and kind of where that is right now, and the FSU job versus the Arkansas job, and so
those are two jobs, and there are going to be more jobs open once the once the season is over. Things are going to start moving. So Arkansas right now has a leg up in that search. You've just got to be able to find a guy who wants to be here.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not ruling out there might be some coordinator out there that has enough longevity.
Dirk Cutter's name.
Are
Talking
they?
about NFL guys.
Okay.
Dirk Cutter don't have a job right now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look.
Thank you, Shane.
Look. I mean, you assembled the right staff. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, as we mentioned before, Brett Bielema had the right pieces there for a while, with Sam Pittman in particular. Yeah. And we haven't even brought up Sam Pittman again.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, Chuck over here, you're reading his mind. No Sam Pittman in the conversation anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, it's unfortunate because a lot of these names we're talking about, the majority of these names are not at Power 5 schools, and for me, too risky. I say that because Hunter Yurchek looked us in the face and said, I cannot afford to get this wrong. I can't go down this same path again. So does that mean that someone outside of a Power 5 school is too risky? Because you went down that path before.
And 2020.
I don't know. That's Hunter Yurchek's job. He gets paid the big bucks to make those decisions.
Yeah, but next season's schedule. 2020 is brutal. You're going to Notre Dame, and you look at the stretch, and the SEC, one in particular that's going to be just mind-boggling. How tough it's going to be. So whoever they get,
got to take a team into Notre Dame.
That's going to be asking a lot.
2020 is a lot,
Doing that and then going to the SEC and seeing the scope of their schedule. Because this year they had a golden opportunity with the schedule and the way it's set up. And then last year they totally botched it after the meltdown at Colorado State in week 2.
Yeah.
So this is where we are. And, again, I still think it's relatively early.
It is.
Could be wrong.
It really is. And I'm going to leave you with this. Just say yes or no if you like it. Brady says, Dirk Cutter, Kellen Moore, the QB coach, and then bring in a big-time DC. You're just building an NFL. You're trying to be like Arizona State.
Yeah, seriously. I think it kind of speaks to that argument. Kellen Moore, it's like, okay, talking about a young guy.
Oh, gosh.
And Mike's been up here, Mike Irwin, talking about just bringing a guy that is really good offensively as your head coach. Yeah. Brilliant offensive mind, and then hire the right defensive coordinator and then the right position coaches around him. You could go that route. It doesn't necessarily have to be a high coach that really knows offense, really knows defense.
Yeah.
Because there could be that divider where if you set it up properly that way, you can move forward right direction.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Someone just threw me off with bring Houston Nutt back. So I think that's where we're going to close it. You missed the whole conversation, so we're good. All right, thanks for joining us. Coaching search continues. Maybe we'll have something else to say by this time next week.
Yeah.
It's game day this time next week.
Who knows? Thanksgiving coming up next week. We got Mizzou on a week from tomorrow.
Maybe a new coach Saturday.
Yeah.
All right, hold on, guys.
Hold on
to it.
Melissa, I think, just wants to close his book on it. That way
I do. Man, it's not exhausting.
Drag it out.
I tell you, fans will tell you it's exhausting, man. I'm following 2 of them. All right.
You said it. It's exhausting.
It is. All right, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow.
For watching this Pig Trail Nation report.